Good morning and welcome to this live class. Today we're going to be talking about essentially this idea of lifting the chest and all of the steps that it takes to do that properly. So we'll go into interjecting the senses and we'll look at what that means. And then hopefully you can start to get an idea of what that starts doing to your nervous system, the way that you breathe, the way that you understand how long you can hold a pose. So in learning this, it might look like just a simple meditation technique or a simple breath technique, but slowly as you practice this, you'll be able to sense more and more subtle aspects of this practice, and then see how important it is and how deep it can be. So hopefully this practice immediately helps you with anxiety, with these symptoms of anxiety in the stomach or in the chest, with different holding patterns that we have in these bodies that cause pain and tension, and start dissolving those slowly, and then give you the ability to understand this lift of the chest, the inner lift that is so connected to with being able to engage this mula bandha, with this energy to keep that lift, that effortless lift in the chest, with very passive eyes, ears, throat. And then you can use that to practice very advanced asana poses, and that prepares the body to practice pranayama safely, and then eventually to hold a meditative state, to be able to sit comfortably, effortlessly, and then stay in meditation longer so that you can advance in that as well. So we're going to get started. I hope you enjoy the class, and you can practice along. Sometimes it's a good idea to take some notes just to get used to the terminology, but then eventually it's nice to sit down and use the guided aspect of the practice to start practicing it yourself a few times, under the guidance maybe of this video, and then eventually you can do this practice on your own. You do start seeing a little bit more subtlety in the practice if you practice it consistently. So, in a perfect case scenario, you would practice it every morning after brushing your teeth, before eating breakfast, for 5 minutes, and increase it, 30 seconds a day until you get to maybe 10 or 20 minutes. But if you have, that is the perfect case scenario. But if you can add, 1 day every 2 weeks, 1 day of the week every 2 weeks. So, you do 1 day a week, and then you add a day, and then, slowly, so that you can have this practice. That would also be nice. So it takes a few more months to get a consistent daily practice, but you get there in a way that is not stressful. So with that said, let's just start out using a chair, and I'll start guiding you through this practice. Okay, so grab a chair that you have. Any chair will do, and I'll show you what to look for in your chair. So I want a chair that will not have, if I'm using the backrest, I'm able to keep my back pretty straight. So if I have a chair where I'm leaning like this, that's not going to be a chair that you want. So you have a chair that you can not use the backrest. If you do use the backrest, there is an opportunity to keep the back straight. The seat of the chair should be such that you are not sinking in, it's not too soft, so it's firm enough, and it's parallel to the floor, so that you're not sitting with your knees up or the other way around. Or some chairs have a big dip in the center, so this one is relatively flat. Then if your legs are dangling here, they don't reach the floor completely, go ahead and place some kind of support there underneath your feet so that you can have this, the bone in your thigh here be parallel with the floor. And again, if you're really, if the chair is too short, then you can also place a support underneath your sit bones so that your feet, the legs are parallel with the floor, right? So if the chair is too short, then add a support underneath your sit bones. Okay, so I feel more supported when I have something underneath my feet, although for me it's almost not necessary, okay, but I'll use something underneath my feet. Okay, so sit here in a comfortable position where you're minimizing slumping forward or rounding the back. You can sit with the back straight and ideally not touching the backrest of the chair. So so this could be your office chair. It can be, the best place would be a place where it's fairly quiet or at least free of distraction or the need for you to do anything. So if there can be noise around, that's always unavoidable, but at least a place where you can disconnect for a little while. Okay, so we'll place the hands here on the quads, and you can place the hands facing up. In the beginning, maybe it's easier to have the palms facing the leg. So here I'm going to start out by taking a few breaths. So close your eyes and start breathing in through the nose. So keep the mouth closed, breathe in through the nose if you can. And take a few deep breaths here. So we'll open the eyes back up and breathing through the nose. What I'll have you do first is close the eyes, but feel the lid of the eye coming down so that your lashes can meet, of the top can meet the bottom lashes. So close the eye very intentionally. So you're relaxing the eyes, the ears, the throat, and you're sliding the eyelid down so that the two lashes are barely meeting, and then you close the eyes completely. So already trying to understand that there is that contact with the eyelid and the cornea of the eye, and we can start softening that cornea of the eye so that it's soft and introjected, meaning it's not pushing outward, and it's warm and protected and moist, and it is, closed by the eyelid. So feel your feet on the floor, spread the toes, and then pressing the feet to the floor, lift your chest. And a deep breath. Release any tension in the knees and up the leg. And then start pressing very gently the palms against the quads so that you're pressing your thighs into the chair. And do that and take a deep breath. So press the thighs gently into the chair. And feel maybe the sit bones going down towards the chair, and then lift the chest, release the belly, lift the chest, and breathe. So soft eyes, soft ears, soft throat. The feet are in contact with the floor. And now just think about the very top of your leg. So you have your eyes closed, you're breathing through your nose, and you're going to bring your attention to the connection point between the very top of your leg and the body. So there's a whole circumference of the thigh at the very top of your leg. So it's this circumference here. And we have this, sometimes the word groin is used, but it's just that connection in the front where the leg, the very top of the thigh, meets the body. So as you breathe in, the next breath in that you take, release any tension around the top of the thigh. So that's a place where we hold a lot of tension. So inhale. As you exhale, release any of the tension. If it's difficult and it's not something that you can access immediately, just tighten that circumference of the top of the thigh. Just make it really tight. Just tighten your quads, tighten your the top of the thigh, that connection between body and leg, and then release. So now as you breathe in, I want you to go a little bit deeper. I want you to maybe put your hands on your hips and imagine where that socket, that connects the hip to the leg, where the leg attaches to the hip, there's like a ball joint socket there. So imagine the head of the femur going into that joint, that big hip joint, and release, as you breathe, release the head of the femur. So it's a much deeper, it's not that surface tightness that you have right around the top of the thigh there. It's a little bit deeper into the head of the femur, right in that ball socket. See if you can breathe and release any tension that you're feeling right at that joint. So release the belly. Breathe in through the nose. As you breathe out, release any tension there. So that in itself is a practice to start releasing the grip of the head of the femur, releasing the grip on the groin. And you can breathe and you can take as much time as you need in that area. We'll move forward today, but you can stop there and have that be your practice for the first few weeks. Take another deep breath, and as you inhale, make sure that the air that comes in through the nose doesn't hit the brain. So you inhale almost as if it was a fragrant breath. So you're inhaling the air and then allowing it to come down and to warm the throat, to soothe the throat and bathe the throat. So every time you get an inhale, you're inhaling without that harshness, that jet of air going up towards the brain. So just inhale, savor the air, the breath, the energy, this prana. Inhale with your chest lifted. So what we'll do next is I'll locate my sit bones, and my sit bones is just this bony part here underneath the hip, the very bottom part there. And without getting too technical on the names, I want you to just feel it and not hone in on the physiological or the anatomic part. Just go into the sit bones, the place where you have the contact with the very, very top here of the leg, where you have that contact with the chair. And I want you to think of pressing the sit bones into the chair. So feet are on the ground, sense organs are introjected, soft. When you breathe, you have this joy of breathing where you're taking in the breath. Pressing those sit bones into the chair. Take a few breaths like that. You can help it with your hand. You can push your hand slightly onto your thigh, and you can feel the sit bones onto the chair. So lift the chest. You can lift the sides of the chest more than just pushing the floating ribs forward or anything like that. So you really want these collarbones going up to the ceiling. So we're going to discover now how it is that we get that feeling and how much the legs, the action of the thighs, the sit bones, and the breathing can help in this lift of the chest. So here what we're exploring is, can we sense that our sit bones can be pushed into the chair, or we can have that sensation like there, we usually say we're grounding the sit bones. So the sit bones are being pushed down onto the chair. And then I notice sometimes there's a tendency to feel like the head of the femur, or this area here, right where my thigh meets the front of my body, is lifting up. So if there's, if I'm tightening my glutes and I'm tightening my quads, if I have like a tightness or a gripping there, I can feel like my femurs are actually coming up towards the top of my thigh. What I want to do is I want to release tension deep in that head of the femur at the joint. And then I want to have the feeling that my femur bone, so the bone here inside my thigh, is actually going down onto the chair. So sit bones are grounded, and then the femur is not coming up, towards my ceiling or my collarbone, but the actual head of the femur and the whole femur are descending down into the chair. So I can create that sensation by releasing the head of the femur, releasing any kind of tightness, and allowing that femur to ground. So grounding the femurs towards the bottom of the thigh, so towards your hamstring. So you can use your hands here and take a few breaths. So savor the breath, lift the chest, and allow the femurs to ground, allow the femurs to press against the seat of the chair, versus that lifting feeling right at the top of the thigh coming. You don't want that puffed up femur. You want that released, calm femur that can ground down onto the chair. And this takes, practice and, and consistency. And eventually you feel like there is a grounding of the femur. There is, that contact with the sit bones on the chair and the grounding of the femur, and it's an effortless thing. So you're not tightening eyes, ears, or throat to do this, or your hands, or you're not tightening your abdomen to do this. You can just go to that area, and it's almost like a release of tension, release of tightness. And a great way to practice that is by using weights. So I'll show you. And you don't need to practice with weights right now, but if you have, this is a pretty heavy sandbag here. So I can put it right here. I don't want the weights near my knee. I want the weight closer here to the body. And I can sit here and receive the weight. So if you don't have a weight bag on you, you can think of it as this idea of receiving the weight versus fighting the weight. So if I'm fighting the weight, I'm pushing everything up, and that will not allow you to relax, to release. So receive the weight. If you don't have a weight or a sandbag, you can picture, a beautiful imaginary elephant sitting on your lap, and you receive the weight. So this is a magical elephant, okay? Won't hurt you, but it will allow that head of the femur to ground, the sit bones to ground, and that action gives you the freedom to, from there, lift the chest. So I inhale, and I ground the femur, and I see how much I can release around that circumference of the thigh, near the body, in the groin area. I see how much I can release the head of the femur. and then how much I can start relaxing those thigh bones, thigh muscles, so I can ground them into the chair. And with that, I get this almost energetic lift. So at first I'm lifting my chest. So go ahead and lift your chest. Make sure that you don't poke your floating ribs forward, creating a back bend here. You're lifting up. So picture, your favorite weight on your thighs. And from that weight, you lift the chest. It's a very subtle lift. Making sure you're not holding any tension in the eyes, the ears, and the throat. So we'll go a little bit further now. We'll introduce another important concept. As we're doing this, so grounding and then lifting, I'm using the musculature of my chest to lift. So I'm using muscles on the sides of the chest, muscles in my back. I'm sometimes, I can be contracting my thighs, although I should be, grounding the thigh. I'm lifting the chest using muscle, spinal muscles, right? Sometimes I'm using my face muscles, so really relax the face to lift the chest, so it's an effortless lift. The next spot where I want to start paying a little bit of attention to is this occipital area of my head. So really this back area, the very, very top of the spine here. I have, an important gland here. So this very top part of the head. And with every breath, for the next 5 breaths, you can release any tension in the back of the head. So you inhale as you lift the chest. Exhale, release any tension here in this occipital area of the brain. So you release your ears, release the back of the head. And this can be your practice. One day you just work on relieving tension in the back of the head here. So once this becomes more automatic to ground the legs, lift the chest, release, drain the tension from the back of the head. So inhale, release the eyes, the ears, and the throat. Drain any tension here in the occipital area of the brain. So take a few breaths where you're breathing through your nose, remembering to savor the breath. So the breath comes in and it washes around, comes into the throat, bathes the throat, soothes the throat. And not only do we get oxygenated blood and the lungs fill with air, but also we receive this life force, this energy that we call prana. And that permeates throughout the body, through every cell of the body, and not just in the lung. You can think of the prana going into every blood cell that you have, giving them not only the physical elements, of H2O or not H2O, of oxygen, sorry. And, but also giving it this life force. All right. So now what we'll do is we'll put all of these things together again. I'm recovering from my H2O comment, so apologize. All right, so we're going to press the feet and then ground the femurs. And we're going to just do a few breaths here where we just lift the chest. So press the sit bones into the chair, lift the chest to discover what that means. So we lift the chest. And the next time that you do it, I want you to lift the chest not from the sit bones, not from releasing the thighs, although all of that's going to help. I want you to bring the sit bones down and back. So we're going to picture the sit bones coming down and back without tensing the eyes, the ears, and the throat. To locate your perineum, which is the skin in between the anus and the vagina, or the anus and the base of the penis. So it's just this patch of skin there called the perineum, and we're going to lift the chest from there. So it's more of an energetic lift. All right, and so let's think of the lift of the chest as if the lungs were filled with a helium type gas. Do not fill your lungs with helium. So this is an imaginary concept where there was a kind of an effortless lift of these lungs, and it lifts the chest. But really it comes from the perineum, from the base of the body here in the seated position. You lift that. It's a very gentle, subtle lift, and it's not a lift of the muscles on the outside or in the front of the spinal muscles, although those are working structurally. It's this inner lift where we lift the perineum, lift here, but we don't allow that to cause any tension in the eyes, the ears, the throat, or the back of the head. So now we'll put it all together. We'll put our hands in the thigh here, and we'll take a few breaths where we start to put it all together. So there's a lot to unpack in this video. If you would watch it and practice maybe each aspect of it, one a week. So slowly you can start developing that sensitivity of the legs. So how to engage the legs and ground the femur. And then from that, lift the chest. Of course, keeping these shoulders relaxed, released, so that the shoulders aren't coming up. So notice if your shoulders trying to help this lift of the chest, that's fine. Eventually we teach them to just release, so the skin of the back is flowing down. So lift the chest here, almost as if the lift comes like a conveyor belt, and it comes up the chest, down the back, up the chest, over and around the collarbones. So it's like this constant conveyor belt that's coming in here and then rolling back down around the collarbones into the body. So there's never, this tightness here in the back. It's almost like everything in the back is releasing towards the front. So like the back of the body is just coming in and hugging the front, so that you're not projecting that spine back or spinal muscles towards the back. It's this release of the back into the front. Releasing any tightness in the belly, eyes, ears, throat, tongue. So tongue is soft, not stuck to the roof of your mouth. You can apply a little pressure on the thigh, ground the femurs, ground the sit bones, release that head of the femur in the hip socket. Release any tension there and breathe in there. Release the groin, the circumference of the very top of the leg where it meets the body. Inhale. And exhale, releasing the eyes, the ears, and the throat. The last thing that I'll go over, which is part of this exercise, will be looking at the action of the breathing and how we can work with the brain diaphragm. And then I'll show you how to do this laying down so that you can really get a good sense of what it feels like to lift the chest. So we'll do these 2 more things. So if I were to take a belt, and you don't need to do a belt, this is just for you to see. Here is the circumference of the head that I am referring to. Okay, so this just shows you the place where I want you to send your attention. So if I were to use my hands, if you were here, we would use my hands around circumference of your head, not the thumbs because they have their own heartbeat. So we use the fingers like this around the circumference of the head. So when I inhale, I will increase the pressure of my hands. So I'm almost going to squeeze a little bit so that when you inhale, you feel like your brain is releasing in. And when you exhale, the brain releases out. So I release the pressure. I don't release the contact, but I release the pressure. So inhale, brain releases in. Exhale, brain releases out. So we use all of these techniques together, and this, first you have this contact just to train yourself that when you inhale, you release in. When you exhale, you release out. It's never an expansion out. So that would be incorrect to think of it as an expansion. Expansion also doesn't introject the senses. It'll actually, creates tension. So we want to think of a release out and a release in. So we do this exercise and we ground the femurs, we lift the chest from the perineum up, we breathe, and as we breathe, we start feeling the brain diaphragm. So it's like could be like a dance routine where first there's so many steps and you're just trying to keep up, but then eventually when these become more familiar to you and you can do them with joy, with ease, it's really nice. So inhale, savor the air, take a few breaths like that, and maybe just ground the femurs. And discover how that happens for you and your body, how it is that you release the tension. You notice that the head of the femur here is puffing up. So you release that, you release the belly, and all of a sudden that releases. And by releasing the belly, you can access further down into the body here so that you can lift that perineum and lift the chest using that energy. And feel the back of the body releasing into the front of the body so the spinal muscles aren't projecting, protruding outwards. They're just releasing forward. The shoulders are relaxed. And you have this effortless lift of the chest. Slowly you release any tension in this occipital area of the head, so breathing in through the nose. And finally, once you start releasing different grips in the belly, grips in the chest, grips in the shoulder, and the upper back, breathe into those areas using all of these other techniques, and then you can just breathe into the shoulder until it releases. Breathe into the groin until it releases. Breathe into the belly, and breathe into the tongue, breathe into the throat. Feel that soothing sensation, just like the ocean hitting the rock and turning it into sand. We can do that in the throat, turning that lump in the throat, slowly corroding it with our breath. Feeling the cornea in the eye and what softness you can bring to that surface in your eye, to the lens of the eye. Releasing the ears. And finally, feeling the sensation of the brain releasing in on inhalation and the brain releasing out on exhalation. And take a few more breaths, just picking one or more of these concepts, these steps, and just working on that for a few breaths. Okay. What we'll end with today is just a setup of blocks on the floor so that you can sense this lift of the chest on the floor. So let's set that up. So I'm going to remove my chair here. And I'm going to bring this mat, stand back out. Okay, I'm going to bring the mat to the wall there. Okay. And I'm going to place the blocks so that my head has enough room to fit in between the blocks. So if I were to put it here for you to see, it would be like this. And maybe I have, my shoulders and neck, just, you set it up to your height, or maybe I put the blocks like this. So my shoulders will be here, touching the block, and then you have room so that your head isn't touching the wall. So making sure that the head won't touch the wall. So I'll show you how to get in. And put the block here. Okay. So there we have it. And it's a good idea to use a sticky mat here because you're going to need that traction from your feet. So I'm going to lay back here. And I'm going to have the shoulders hitting the block, making sure that my head is not hitting the wall here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my shoulders here on the mat, and then I'm going to use my feet to scoop that skin of the back here, scoop it down towards the sacrum so that skin is very taut here and it's not bunching up near my neck. So I'm going to roll my skin down towards my sacrum, and I'm going to have this nice quality of my chest, keeping my legs there. I want to make sure I'm not, too arched, so keep that normal lumbar curve, normal curve of the back, so I'm not pressing my lower back into the floor, nor am I creating a huge back bend. So if I lose that back, I do it again. Okay. So I am laying here, and what I'll do is I'll start taking some deep breaths here, releasing any tension in the eyes, the ears, and the throat. Hands to my side. And I'm going to inhale, release eyes, ears, and throat. Maybe I can do a few exercises where I release the brain in on inhalation, release the brain out on exhalation. And then, without lifting my shoulders, I can lift the collarbones towards the wall, so towards my head, not towards the ceiling, but towards this back wall here, so towards the head. I can lift the collarbones. So there's another way to feel that lift of the chest. Then I picture my lungs, filled with, a very light, like a helium compound kind of a thing, and I lift the lungs towards the head. Sometimes you can describe it as a divine lift, just a pair of hands that are just these magical hands, and they lift the bottom of the lungs, lifting the chest. And that lift shouldn't create any pressure in the eyes, the ears, or the throat. And then after doing that a few times, lift the chest from the perineum and create that sensation of the lift. And you'll notice at first your ears tense, maybe the tongue tenses, maybe you hold your breath, And that's fine. So we start noticing that, right? It's a nice thing to notice. And eventually you can lift the chest from the perineum here without tightening the belly, any of your abdominal muscles, without tightening your chest, without tightening your throat, your eyes, your ears. It's just a inner lift, and it's not here at the surface of the front of the body, that lift, and it's not on the surface of the back. It's a lift that comes, maybe the closest place is along the spine or along the vertebral column. And once you lift the chest, release any tension in the occipital area in the back of the head. Let it dissipate from there. And then go ahead and release. Turn to the right. Okay, this was a lot of information. I hope that you enjoy it and that you're able to practice it. Please send me any questions on the comments if you have any questions. And I hope it works for you. And I hope that you're able to really release any tension in the head, in the chest, and start learning this beautiful art of lifting the chest and interjecting the senses.